Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into it, going straight to the source of so much modern thinking on success.
That's right. The 1937 original version of Napoleon Hill's classic, Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah, an absolute cornerstone.
And this book, it wasn't just dashed off. It came out of, 25 years of really intensive research by Hill.
25 years, wow.
Digging into the lives and the experiences of over 500 people who, made it big, built great fortunes.
And didn't Andrew Carnegie personally give him a formula?
He did. That's a critical piece. Carnegie shared his personal formula for achievement directly with Hill. It's foundational to the whole thing.
Okay, so our mission here, for you listening, is to kind of cut through all that, the decades, the pages, and pull out the most potent, the most actionable bits of wisdom. Like a shortcut,
Exactly. A shortcut to the core engine driving this material.
Yeah.
Because, and Hill stresses this himself,
Right.
the knowledge in the book. It's useless if actionation is never taken.
Yeah.
If it just sits there.
So true. It's about doing something with it.
Precisely. So the real value, our goal, is helping you understand what kind of action this material is actually calling for. Hill laid out a step-by-step method. We want to shine a light on those key steps.
Okay, let's dive in. The absolute starting point, the thing Hill hammers home again and again. It's not even action first, is it? It's clarity.
It's clarity and intensity. He calls it the power of a definite purpose and a burning desire. That's the fuel.
A burning desire.
Absolutely. You need to know exactly what you want. He uses that story of Edwin C. Barnes, right? And his quest to work with Thomas Edison.
Oh, yeah, that story's amazing because Barnes didn't just want any job with Edison.
No, not at all. He had a definite purpose. He was going to be Edison's business associate.
And the book says he showed up looking like a tramp, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. But he was willing to start absolutely anywhere, do anything, just to get a foot in the door.
And he stuck with it. For years, apparently, in some basic job.
Just waiting. Persisting until the right chance came along. Hill says he stood by his desire till it became a dominating obsession.
A dominating obsession. And he burned all bridges behind him. No going back.
Exactly. That level of focus, that intensity, that's what Hill argues turned the desire into reality. Not just a wish, a real burning need for that specific outcome.
That intensity. It really is a theme. He shares that incredibly personal story, too, about his son, Blair.
Right, born without hearing. And he and his wife, they deliberately planted this desire in the boy's mind.
The desire to hear, talk, live normally.
Yes, but also, and this is crucial, they paired it with the belief that his condition, his affliction, could become an asset.
How did they do that practically?
Well, they took steps, worked with teachers, made sure he got special attention, sold him on the idea, really, and then years later, the book says he gets a hearing aid.
And that sparks something.
It sparks an idea, a hunch, an inspiration to dedicate his life to helping others with hearing loss.
So he literally turned the affliction into an asset.
Exactly as Hill described. And Hill uses it to show the power, almost like a miracle, of belief plus burning desire, making the intangible feel real enough to manifest.
Okay, so that belief, that brings us to faith, doesn't it? Where does that come from?
Well, Hill argues it's not just something you have or don't have. Faith is a state of mind, something you can actively create, induce even.
Induce faith. How?
The main tool he gives is autosuggestion, basically feeding your subconscious mind specific instructions or affirmations over and over.
Like programming it.
Kind of, yeah, like setting your internal GPS. But the key, the book stresses, is that only emotionalized thoughts really have influence down there.
So it's back to that intensity.
Right. It's the desire, that burning desire mixed with faith. That's what the subconscious acts on. And Hill says that connects you to infinite intelligence.
So just repeating words isn't enough.
Nope. He even warns that praying with fear basically cancels out the prayer, sends a mixed signal.
Got it. It's the feeling. He has some powerful quotes on this, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah. Faith is the starting point of all accumulation of riches. And he calls it the only known antidote for failure. Strong stuff.
Definitely. And he gives practical steps, too, like writing down your desire.
Yes, those 6 steps. They include writing it down clearly and then reading that statement aloud twice a day, morning and night.
And not just reading it, but seeing and feeling yourself already having achieved it.
Exactly. Done in a spirit of absolute faith. That's how you communicate with the subconscious. It's a deliberate practice.
And this auto-suggestion thing, it works both ways.
Absolutely. Hill says it will lift you up or pull you down according to the way you set your sails of thought.
Yeah.
Your conscious thoughts are the rudder.
Okay, so if faith fuels the engine and auto-suggestion programs it, where do you actually build the plan?
That's imagination. Hill calls it the workshop of the mind.
The workshop of the mind. I like that.
It's where desires and faith get shaped into actual plans and ideas. He makes the bold claim, man can create anything which he can imagine.
Anything. Wow, does he break down imagination?
Yeah, he talks about two types. Synthetic imagination. That's like rearranging old ideas, concepts, plans into new combinations. Most practical plans use this.
Okay, remixing what's already there.
Right. Then there's creative imagination. That's described as tapping into something bigger, receiving new ideas, inspiration, maybe from that infinite intelligence.
Like flashes of genius.
Sort of. It functions best, he says, when the mind is vibrating rapidly, strong emotion, desire, or very quiet. That's the realm of genie.
But for most of us, trying to make a plan, what's the key step?
It's simple but powerful. Write it down. Reduce your plan to writing.
Why is writing it down so important?
Because the moment you do, Hill says, you give concrete form to the intangible desire. You make it real, tangible, at least on paper. It's the first step to making it real in the world.
That makes sense. There's that story in the book, The Old Kettle, right? Illustrates the power of just an idea.
Oh yeah, fascinating story. A doctor sells this old kettle plus a recipe on a slip of paper for $500.
Which was a lot of money back then.
A huge amount. A clerk used his life savings to buy it.
And that simple idea.
That idea, bought for $500, led to fabulous fortunes. It was the start of Coca-Cola.
No way!
Yep. Generated massive wealth, huge industry around sugar, funded Emory University.
All from an idea on a piece of paper in an old kettle.
And Hill's point is crucial. The kettle itself.
Whoa.
Incidental. The paddle. Incidental. The idea was the real value.
That really hits home today, doesn't it? The value of the intangible.
Absolutely. And the book is packed with other dreamers who didn't just dream, they acted. And they didn't quit.
Like Henry Ford.
Ford. Edison. Think about Edison and the light bulb.
Yeah.
10,000 failures.
10,000.
Whelan, who started United Cigar Stores, Lincoln, the Wright brothers, Marconi. Hill calls dreams the seedlings of reality. And the clincher. Practical dreamers do not quit.
Okay, so you need the dream, the idea, the plan from imagination. But dreams face obstacles. What keeps you going?
Persistence. Simple as that, but absolutely essential.
He calls it the sustained effort necessary to induce faith.
Exactly. And it's not passive. It's based on willpower plus desire. He calls them an irresistible pair.
An irresistible pair. I like that imagery.
It's like having insurance against failure. That's his phrase.
Insurance against failure. How so?
Because people who cultivate that habit of persistence, they might get knocked down, defeated temporarily, loads of times, but they finally arrive up toward the top of the ladder. They just keep going.
He uses the example of Fannie Hurst, the writer, right? Struggling for years before making it on Broadway.
4 years of struggle. And his conclusion, verily it pays to be persistent.
But it's hard to be persistent. He talks about why people lack persistence too, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah. He details the symptoms of lack of persistence. And these are just, minor flaws. He calls them the real enemies blocking achievement.
What are some of them?
It's a long list. Quitting easily, making excuses, indifference, not having that definite purpose we talked about, indecision, doubt, worry, procrastination.
Being too cautious. Seeking shortcuts.
All of those. Compromising too easily, expecting poverty, not being ambitious, wanting something for nothing.
And he highlights one specifically, doesn't he? Fear of.
Fear of criticism. That's a big one. The failure to create plans and to put them into action because of what other people will think, do, or say.
That's huge. How many great ideas die because someone's afraid of being judged?
He even mentions people letting relatives wreck their lives because of that fear.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
So what's the cure for this lack of persistence?
It's not one simple thing. It's basically practicing all the other principles. Having that definite purpose, the burning desire, being self-reliant, having definite plans, knowing your stuff.
Accurate knowledge.
Cooperation, the mastermind idea, developing willpower, and just, practicing persistence until it becomes second nature, a habit.
Okay, you mentioned the mastermind there. Cooperation. Hill says you can't really get rich alone, right?
Not great fortunes, usually. He argues it almost always requires collaboration, organized planning.
And the mastermind is his framework for that.
Exactly. He defines it as coordination of effort in a spirit of harmony between two or more people for the attainment of a definite purpose.
Spirit of harmony. That sounds important.
Very. And he even talks about a psychic phase, like when minds truly coordinate harmoniously. There's this increased energy, a collective intelligence almost, that benefits everyone involved.
Wow. Like the sum is greater than its parts.
Definitely feels that way. He uses Henry Ford as an example, deliberately associating with minds like Edison, Burbank, Burroughs, Firestone, adding to his own brain power.
So it's about choosing your associates carefully.
Very much so. And Hill extends these ideas to how you market yourself, your personal services.
Like selling yourself.
Well, more like presenting your value effectively, like a smart merchant sells goods. Know what you offer.
And how does he suggest doing that? Not just sending a resume.
No, much more proactive.
Yeah.
Create a written brief. Lay out your qualifications, yes, but also the services you could provide, your experience, and crucially, the ideas you bring.
Focus on what you can give, not just what you want.
Exactly. Shift the focus from, is there an opening, to, here's the value I can deliver.
He gives examples of this working. Right.
Yeah, really compelling ones. An unemployed grocery salesman who basically created his own accounting business by presenting a plan. And a young guy whose planned presentation apparently shaved 10 years off his climb up the ladder.
10 years, just from a better approach.
It underscores that idea.
Yeah.
There's no fixed price for sound ideas, and that quote that challenges everything.
And the one about hard work.
Yeah. Riches are never the result of hard work. Riches come in response to definite demands based upon the application of definite principles and not by chance or luck.
So it's about smart, principled, focused effort, not just brute force work.
That's the core message, directed effort. Now, we need to touch on how Hill frames opportunity. He wrote this in 1937, so the context is specific to that time and place, the U.S. system then.
Right. And it's important we just report what the source says here neutrally. We're not endorsing, just explaining his perspective from the text.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Hill highlights what he saw as the economic advantages then. Freedom to choose your job, own property, live where you want, marry, travel, choose food. Equal opportunity, as he stated it.
And he saw capitalism itself as built by these principles.
Yes. Built through imagination, faith, decision, persistence, the things he's teaching, driven by desires to build, serve, profit, achieve. He argues these capitalists rendered essential services for civilization.
What about the Great Depression? How did he view that?
He saw it as a kind of mighty protest from an injured public that actually forced positive changes.
Changes like what?
He gives examples like bankers having to be more approachable, less hiding behind mahogany doors, even streetcar drivers being more accommodating. He presents it as a shift away from a public be damned attitude toward more service.
Okay. But he acknowledges the criticism of capital, too.
He does mention the criticism aimed at organized capital, the money changers, during that time. But his overall stance in the book is firm. That if you want riches, you need to adapt to the system. Find your place by offering useful service. He suggests people demanding things without giving service or wanting government help without any personal inconvenience had it wrong, in his view.
And he had a pretty stark concluding thought on that.
Yes, the source basically says, if you don't like the U.S. capitalist system, you have the privilege of clearing out. That's the perspective presented in the 1937 text. We're just relaying it.
Understood. Okay, let's shift gears to some of the more, maybe abstract concepts, the sixth sense.
Right. Hill describes this as a faculty, a part of the mind that connects your finite everyday mind to infinite intelligence.
Infinite intelligence, like a universal source of knowledge.
That's the idea. It's where totally new ideas, insights, revelations seem to come from.
And how does it work? When does it kick in?
He says it functions best when the conscious mind is vibrating rapidly, maybe through intense emotion, like that burning desire, or when the mind is very quiet, receptive, an exalted plane of thought, he calls it.
Is that where hunches come from?
That's exactly it. Those gut feelings, flashes of insight, especially for people who use their imagination a lot. The creative imagination faculty is the direct link here.
Did Hill have a way of developing this himself?
He did, a very unique one, his invisible counselors.
Invisible counselors, what were they?
He'd hold these imaginary meetings in his mind with historical figures he admired. Emerson, Lincoln, Edison, people like that.
And what would he do in these meetings?
He'd ask them for specific knowledge or qualities he wanted to emulate. And he claimed that over time, these figures started to feel real to him.
Seriously?
Apparently so. He said he received ideas, guidance, inspiration through this process, attributing it to them. It's quite something.
Definitely unique. Does he say everyone needs to do this?
No, he notes that really mastering the sixth sense takes years of meditation, self-reflection. But, importantly, you can still achieve material success using the other principles without getting to that level.
Okay. Now, tied into this idea of higher thought, there's the mystery of sex transmutation. What's that about?
Well, transmutation just means changing energy from one form to another. Hill identifies the sex drive, the urge of sex, as one of the most powerful stimuli the human mind has. Hugely potent energy.
Okay. So what's the transmutation part?
The idea is when you consciously harness that powerful energy and redirect it.
Redirect it from just physical expression.
Right. Redirect it towards other creative endeavors, art, literature, building a business, focusing intensely on your profession. He argues it retains its power.
What kind of power?
Keenness of imagination, courage, persistence, drive. It lifts people to a higher sphere of thought, as he puts it.
That's interesting. Does he think many people do this?
He makes the claim that only genia, true geniuses, have really discovered and applied this deliberately. Most people, he suggests, misunderstand or misuse this force.
And he links it to famous, successful people.
Yeah, he lists figures like Washington, Napoleon, Shakespeare, Edison again, suggesting they were highly sexed individuals whose greatness came partly from harnessing that energy.
Controversial, perhaps, but that's his claim. He also mentions age, doesn't he? Like a peak creative period.
He does. He observes that men are often most productive between 40 and 60, his theory. Maybe between 30 and 40, nature starts to harmonize the emotions of love and sex.
Leading some to accidentally stumble upon this transmutation.
That seems to be the suggestion. Accidental discovery and application.
And what about love and romance in this?
He says when those three, love, sex, and romance, are blended, the barriers between the finite mind and infinite intelligence can drop. That's when genius might be born.
Wow. And a partner's role is important.
Hugely important, according to the source. A spouse's understanding or lack thereof of these emotions can significantly impact a man's success or failure.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Purpose, desire, faith, autosuggestion, imagination, persistence, planning, mastermind, opportunity, sixth sense, sex transmutation. But none of it works if you're blocked, right?
Exactly. Hill stresses you must overcome three core enemies: indecision, doubt, and fear.
Those are the big ones. They stop the whole philosophy cold.
They do, and they block that connection to the sixth sense. So the final big part of the book is tackling fear head on.
The 6 basic fears.
Right. You got to know them to conquer them. Fear of poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of love, old age, and death.
He calls the fear of poverty the most destructive.
Yeah, absolutely paralyzing.
Yeah.
Cripples reason, imagination, self-reliance, ambition. Even though we live in abundance, potentially.
What are the symptoms he lists?
Things like indifference, indecision again, doubt, worry, procrastination, just generally expecting things to go wrong financially.
Yeah.
Aimlessness, low ambition, loss of self-respect. It's a grim picture.
And fear of criticism. We talked about that with persistence.
We did. It stops you creating plans, stops you acting because you're worried what Gene down the street will think.
Symptoms like lack of initiative, criticizing others.
Exactly. And just accepting defeat without even trying. That point about letting relatives wreck your life because you fear their judgment, it's stark.
Then fear of ill health. Where does that come from?
He links it to heredity, maybe social conditioning, fear of the unknown. The symptoms are things like negative self-talk about health.
Always looking for symptoms.
Yeah, hypochondria, basically. Enjoying the sympathy from imaginary illness. He even suggests disease itself can sometimes start as just a negative thought.
He shares stories about overcoming this, right?
Yeah, like the NY mayor calming plague fears with common sense, or the guy cured of imaginary illness by falling in love. Shifts the focus.
What about the other fears? Loss of love, old age, death?
Briefly, loss of love shows up as jealousy, fault-finding, trying to buy affection. Yeah. Fear of old age often links back to fear of poverty, or maybe losing attractiveness, or negative societal views. Fear of death, he felt, was mainly tied to religious dogma back then, and lessening thanks to science.
So 6 big fears. What's the cure? How do you beat them?
It comes down to one thing, really. Decision. Making a conscious choice.
A decision about what?
Deciding not to worry about criticism. Deciding to accept old age as a time of wisdom, not decline. Deciding to focus on wellness, not symptoms. Deciding you can cope, even if love is lost. It's about taking conscious control.
Which leads right back to that fundamental point.
The most significant, most inspiring fact Hill knows. You have absolute control over but one thing, and that is your thoughts.
Everything stems from that. Your thoughts are the one thing you truly command.
And that's why he warns so strongly against excuses. Alibis.
What does he say about alibis?
calls them the child of one's own imagination, fatal to success. And the reason they're so deadly, people defend them because they created them.
It's a self-made prison.
Exactly. He uses that powerful analogy, life as a checkerboard.
And your opponent is time.
Right. If you hesitate before moving or neglect to move promptly, your men will be wiped off the board by time. Excuses are just hesitation, delay, failure to decide and act.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive,
Well,
we've really dug into the core of Hill's 1937 Think and Grow Rich. That absolute need for definite purpose, burning desire.
fueled by faith, built up through auto-suggestion.
Using imagination as your workshop, persistence as your guarantee.
Leveraging organized planning and the mastermind.
Understanding the context of opportunity he wrote in, exploring those deeper ideas like the sixth sense and sex transmutation.
And crucially, identifying and conquering those enemies. Indecision, doubt, and especially the 6 basic fears.
All rooted in that power of decision and controlling your thoughts.
Exactly. This dive, it was all about pulling out those core insights for you, prompting you to think about the action these principles really demand.
And we'll leave you with that bedrock truth straight from the source. You have absolute control over about one thing, and that is your thoughts. Hill didn't mince words. He called it the most significant and inspiring of all facts known to man.
So just pause on that for a second. Really think, what power does that fundamental fact give you? And maybe more importantly, how will you choose to exercise that control starting right now?